Yeah, and I love the way, and David, you brought it together really eloquently in your last statement, and it goes on my respect for Carmen and her work. And Carmen, like your whole theory, the whole way you go about your work, and always mentioning the matriarchy and the patriarchy aspects of our existence. In today's modern technology, the age of plastic, as you put it, that for me, that's the scientific age doesn't really marry well with the intuitive knowing that we all have. And I just love your work because you're not afraid to go out there outside the boundaries of science itself and bring in that intuitive aspect to your work. And I think that actually goes a long way in breaking down that patriarchal paradigm that we currently exist in. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, and people think that matriarchy is the opposite of patriarchy, where, women are going to control men and drag them around by their hair. But that's just not the deal at all. Like, I think we're going to come to see the last 5,000 years as a patriarchal hiccup, which is a failed experiment of what happens if you lop off the balance, lop off the sacred feminine, because we need the balance. And so, I was interviewed the other day, and somebody said, well, don't we need a little bit of evil just for good measure? And I'm like, I'm about done with evil, if you don't mind. It doesn't mean we're not challenged and we're not, looking to become more conscious. But, we're in a crisis of values.
Yeah.
And I said that. That was the last thing I said at the Modern Knowledge Tour last year. And people just went, yeah. I mean, that's, like when truth is an option, we're in trouble.
Yeah. No, we should be living right from that core. And interesting about the whole masculine feminine principle, when you look at it, you have obviously the positive and negative sides of both. And there's been imbalances in both areas. And you can see that even in pop culture. I mean, just looking at the way women are being addressed and viewed and itemized and, almost brought forward as some kind of a sacrificial, corpse. This is the symbolism coming out of Hollywood and pop music and whatnot, a very negative view of femininity, as opposed to bringing the beauty from these ancient bodies of knowledge that will help re-inspire the positive feminine act. And I think, and I was speaking actually to some Michael about this, Michael Tessarian, and he believes that it's going to be the positive femininity, the positive feminine side that is going to literally save the planet. The masculine side can't do it alone. We're kind of got our hands tied in a way, and we need that maternal, positive female energy that will actually be what is going to create that more positive space for us in the future. So your work really does dovetail into that, and especially when you're going back to Egypt and back to these ancient sites and looking at it with fresh eyes again. And now that we can do it with technology and hopefully get some more insight from these discoveries and from even this discovery, that it might indeed, whether we can dig it up or not, it might indeed start a new sphere of consciousness and a new sphere of awareness that we can use to navigate as we look at other sites and dig up our past more. And I think that we can get out of this historical amnesia, and maybe that's going to be another big thing that'll help set us free in our present time.
Well, consider this. In matriarchal culture, the men sought out the women because they don't have the cycles. And so for men to be connected to cycles, they need to connect with a woman who's having the cycle. And the highest form of DNA is menstrual blood. And so blood from life was the essence, and that's what made the harmony. But the women would start to flow together, and then they would go into these dream circles in the hypogeum and various places underground, and they would dream together. So the rooms were big enough to put their heads together literally and to lie, and they would collect their menstrual blood, and they would use it on the fields for fertilization and in rituals. So the Virgin Mother Crone were the three aspects of that: white, red, and black. And that's the triple goddess. Okay, so everything was working within that. Well, when the patriarchy took over, they were still wearing, the high hat, the red, white, and black, and the dress. But then they started sacrificial lambs, blood from death, and sublimated that we don't just die and get reborn, because the Egyptians didn't even have a word for death. And so we sublimate this whole aspect of death being like being reborn into the arms of the great cosmic mother, which you're being born into your next phase of what you're doing. We've sublimated all of that. So now we just have this obsession with death. blood, dead, killing, dead, blood from death.
Yeah.
So anytime you see blood sacrifices, it's on the other side of the blood from life, which is completely different.
It's
I
like,
mean, the baby can be born inside it.
Yeah. It's worse than just a misinterpretation of those older understandings of what those, I guess, particular rituals or rites of passage were used for. It was a manipulation of it, in my view, in the same way that when you look at religion, you know, there's obviously those positive qualities to these different religious texts and ideas and teachings, but they siphoned that out of those positive traditions from which they were originated, and then later it got bastardized and changed into this idea of, well, our religion is superior, or our ritual has to be about physical death and blood and sacrifice, as opposed to understanding, you know, a connectivity and a maternal Earth Mother or whatever. So there's been a distortion, really, either way. Historically, there's been a distortion. Some people call it the Great Schism. Some people think that it was because of the ancient cataclysms, and there must have been a few, but because of these cataclysms that literally fractured our genetic memory, our consciousness in a way. And then the priests of old that, you know, they basically just took advantage. They took advantage of that and started, you know, keeping the direction going of control, of, you know, more of a negative patriarchy, of ruling and kings and queens and priests, etc. So we're in this process now, and I don't think maybe a lot of people understand what we're a part of in the modern day, but we are in the space of remembering all of this, not just the good, happy parts, but even the negative stuff too, so that we can deal with this trauma, and that we can put these puzzle pieces together to really get a handle on the present. Because we're not going to be able to survive another type of event like what our ancestors must have gone through, if that comes, if we haven't been able to put the pieces together from the past. So I think that the work you're doing, Carmen, and so many other people of really trying to get in there, keep hypothesizing, keep theorizing, keep throwing everything we can at it, because it's what is necessary for us to make headway. So I personally am very much looking forward to your presentation coming up in August.
Well, thanks. And I'm really looking forward to doing it because the audience is so rich, if you will, even if we're not rich in our pocketbooks, we're rich mentally.
That's right.